Kat, this is probably the most important conversation we'll have all day because there are sports conversations, there are life conversations, and every now and then there's a conversation where the two intersect. And this is one of those conversations, a sports and life conversation that you and home should pay close attention to, regardless of how much you care about Ja Morant, the Grizzlies, or even the NBA. This is an important conversation, so buckle up for it. What is your reaction to Ja Morant and that video that just resurfaced again?
I mean, I'm upset. I'm upset for the simple fact that, well, first of all, my son loves Ja Morant.
How old is your son?
My 13-year-old son loves Ja Morant. Now, from the tattoos to the, I'm a little jealous because I don't have hair, but the tattoos to the dreads to the everything like that, you know, these kids mimic him. So now you see this slap on the wrist 2 months ago to now, six incidents, by the way. 6 things happened. Well, 4 of them was gunplay. I'm from North Philadelphia. My father's a 2-striker. My brother served 3 lifetimes. My uncle was a lifer. I understand jail. I understand all those things. I grew up in a rough neighborhood. For Ja Morant, he has a responsibility, and Joy was speaking about this. We were in the room. He has a child, so stop acting like a child. That's my thing. And you know, the incident with his mother calling twice. One was finish line, the other one I think was a volleyball game. So what is it, not just Ja Morant, but what is it in your household, right? Your father. What is it in your household? Who has the voice? Who can really take you to the side and say, listen, you're messing this up. Your daughter, your son, whoever, they see this, kids see this, you have a response. Even if you don't want the responsibility, if you don't want it, stop playing. Go hide away. If you want the responsibility, be responsible. That's my thing. For me, being a single father, I can't just go out there and act all crazy. I have a responsibility. That's what you have. Sign the contract, stay with it, don't negotiate with the guy that's on the driver's seat, right, that don't really care. Because I have guys like that. I've been around guys like that at a very young age. Now, I was blessed to be around the Kobes and the Alvin Williams and the Rasheed Wallaces and the Aaron McKees, Eddie Jones, and all those guys. I stayed with them. I didn't go the other route because I saw my dad, I saw my uncle, I saw my brother, I saw guys get killed. I saw those things. So when you play with, now imagine if the cops would have pulled up next to them or saw them dancing and acting crazy with a gun in the car. How would you think that would end up? Now it's all this, now we get into the race thing, but it's a gun in your hand and you acting silly. Now, after the first time, I get it. Not the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time. I don't care what my peers say, you know what I mean? Like, you know, whatever excuse they want to give, oh, he's young, give him listen, in baseball, you get 3 strikes, you got to get out of there. You can't keep doing this because it's not about you anymore. It's about people little kids looking at you and what they think they should act like. You shouldn't act like this. This is to me, doesn't make sense.
What's more disappointing? Because you said a lot, and you moved my heart a lot when you said it. Is it the aspect of he is a father himself?
Yeah.
Is it his responsibility to his team? Or is it the obligation of him being a role model and having 13-year-old kids like your own son looking up to him? What moves your heart the most when you think of the disappointment personally for you?
Right, so for me being a father, I'm a father and a mentor. I'm a godfather. So when my children and young adults, whatever, they look at me, they expect me to do certain things. And then I set a certain standard. Kobe Bryant set a standard when he was with the Lakers. Yeah, he might have been a little bit rough, but Michael Jordan set a standard. LeBron James sets a standard. It's a certain thing it's a responsibility that you have. So me as a father, because he's a father, and he's a mentor to kids, the team part it'll come together because if your structure at home and your structure within is solid, then everything else will be easier. But it's not solid. And that's what bothers me the most. It's not about the basketball. Now, if you take control of your person, your brand, everything else will be in place. All the other guys on the team, the Dylan Brookses of the world, right? All the other guys on the team, they think that's okay. They think it's okay.
This is fascinating. This is interesting. I'm glad y'all are here to be a part of this conversation. Joy, I know you had some response, and it was an interesting response. What was your reaction after this latest suspension?
I mean, it probably won't be the most popular opinion, but he is an adult man. He is aware of the consequences of behaving like this because he just experienced the consequences of behaving like this. It has cost him a lot of money. It has cost his teammates. It has cost the organization. It has put the NBA in a bad position. And he obviously does not care. You can only plead ignorance for a certain amount of time. You can only lean into the grace of excuses or youth or inexperience or bad influences for a certain amount of time. And then it becomes very obvious, at least to me, that I can't care more about your future and your finances and your legacy and your career than you do. I think if people are going through something and it is obvious that there is help needed, that there is intervention needed, and perhaps this is the case, I don't know, but it seems very obvious he is aware. He has spoken about it. He has done interviews. There has been suspensions. He is aware that doing something like this will have very serious consequences, and he continues to do it. So at what point does all of our pontificating about his behavior cease to matter? Because he has to make this decision for himself. It's why I try very hard not to refer to young people who are adults as kids, because I can see myself at 23, and I was a disaster, and I will still continue to make mistakes throughout my life. But to Cuttino's point, I have a responsibility now that I didn't have when I was 23. Perhaps if I had the responsibility that I have now at 23, I might have moved differently. I would have hoped if I was making those decisions with that responsibility that people would have sat me down and told me very seriously what the consequences would be. So that's one half of why I feel like this is in Ja Morant's hands now. His future is in his hands. Everyone has warned him. I'm sure people have reached out to him. I'm sure mentors have spoken to him, have spoken to his family. He's spoken to the commissioner. He's spoken to the NBA. I'm sure he's spoken to all of his corporate sponsors. I'm sure other people have reached out to him. And he is still choosing to behave this way. So at some point, it's in Ja Morant's hands, and that's how I feel. The other side of this to me is we have a state religion in this country, and it is gun violence. It is our number one identifier internationally. If you leave this country and you talk to people in another country, the first thing that you are asked is, are you guys okay? Are you serious about these guns? Do you actually send your children to school and are afraid that someone will come and shoot up the school? And the answer, of course, is yes. So we have a problem, a very serious problem, with gun violence and the representation that we have with guns in this country. Most of the people in this country are perfectly fine with gun violence. That's why we continue to have it. So him being in a situation with a gun, while I may have my own personal opinions about it, I need everyone to keep the same energy for what that represents all the time. So this is Ja Morant's choice. This situation is at the feet of Ja Morant 100%. But at the same token, I need us to keep the same energy for everything else that's going on surrounding this particular topic. The reason this is a problem is not because he's listening to music on IG Live. It's because he has a gun.
Right.
Are you sure that he does not care? Are you sure that he knows what the consequences are?
Well, I'm sure he knows what the consequences are because I'm sure those conversations have been had, and he already has suffered consequences of it.
Yeah, but
But I know where Rick's going to go.
But to what degree?
Yeah.
Like, what has it really cost him? Hasn't cost him his stardom.
Right.
Hasn't cost him, okay, it cost him a couple of games, all right? Nike hasn't dropped him.
It was too quick.
Like, the Grizzlies, one of the Grizzlies' responses to this was, you know what, we're not going to stay over in Miami or LA. That's it? Like, you think you're going to change someone's perspective on what the proper behavior is as a superstar athlete by not staying over in a couple of cities that have some nightlife? Are you kidding me?
Didn't James just ask Doc, can he go to Vegas in his private jet? He didn't he? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And what did Doc say?
Yeah.
Sure, go ahead. I don't, again, talked about the accountability, and it does start with Ja. But I can't help but feel that the NBA and the Memphis Grizzlies have afforded him all of these gifts, right? And to your point, okay, so there's a half a dozen incidents. We didn't hear anything until March. That was the last of the incidents until this one. And was there ever any measures taken prior to that to say, this is not acceptable behavior. And I don't, the gun thing is secondary to the idea that playing in the NBA and being a professional athlete and a star of his making, top 10, youngest player in the top 10 in jersey sales. So he has value to the league in a very business-like way, to the league and to the Grizzlies. And they don't have a problem with everything that has transpired. There's no accountability. Why are we not addressing that this is not acceptable behavior for someone in your position? And if that behavior does not change, I'm sorry, you're a great player. You're going to lose that position. But that's never been on the table as something that he could potentially lose. So why should he change?
Who would that come from, though, Kat? Would it come from the Grizzlies or would it come from the NBA? Because if you are talented, there will always be room for you, especially if you're as talented as Ja is. So even if the Grizzlies were to do something out of character, out of NBA or professional sports character and say, you know what, we're cutting ties with them, somebody gonna pick them up. So who actually can teach Ja a meaningful lesson? And not even teach him a meaningful lesson. He's a grown man, like George alluded to. But who can reprimand him in a manner in which will actually matter?
Well, it should have started with his father, T, where that's your voice. My stepfather who passed away my rookie year, and my father to this day, they're my oracles. They speak to me about certain things. And they're not going to say, you better not do this. But listen, man, you have to do this, this, and this. I tell my kids now, man, I say, listen, the lights stay on, you want the bike, you want all these things. I love you. So you loving me is when I ask you to do certain things. So Ja had to say to himself, okay, if you care about kids, if you care about your kids, if you care about the NBA, if you care about your life, you have to do certain things that you may not feel like doing. Like stay in the house or I just don't understand for me where, and again, it may not be just Ja.
Yeah.
Because there's situations with, the family and how they have acted throughout these.
But Cuttino, to your point, we've had plenty of players that came from families that didn't necessarily give the appropriate support or give the appropriate lessons. And yet those guys found a way to, but I would say, I mean, you've matured. You know plenty of guys that grew up in the league, right? What's the difference here? Why is Ja not getting it? Because to me, it's everything from the structure of the Grizzlies where you have no veterans, you have nobody. You talked about the guys that shaped you, right? Who's going to shape Ja Morant in that Grizzlies locker room?
You know what this is? It's this generation where it's the instant gratification, and I'm going to punish you for 2 seconds, and you can come back out. That's what this is. Because when we grew up, it was more harsh. The mentors were harsh. Now you're talking these AAU kids and all this other stuff. When you argue, if you yell at my kid, I'm taking my kid off the team. I'm doing something else. So there's really no uncomfortable, there's no accountability. That trickles. That's just not him. That's a lot of them. So if I start, I'm hard on my sons and my daughter, but I love and I kiss and I hug and I communicate with them. And a lot of these kids don't get that. They get the, I'm not playing, so I'm gonna go to another team. Oh, I'm not doing this, so I'm doing, all those things. Ja may have not been that person because he was really good at AAU, him and Zion Williamson. But at the end of the day, it's still those different characteristics that he carries around where the NBA smacked him on his and
well, the fear, obviously, that, and this is why everyone was talking about that, because it's not just that he's going out partying. It's not that he's doing things that everyone does, and it's just amplified. What he's playing with is life and instruments of life and death.
Correct. And Joy, if I can, and obviously we have to take y'all to break here soon, is that's the issue I have with it, is Ja Morant, you are holding an instrument that carries other people and your own life in your hands. So what's your intention? I don't like how people are trying to make this a race issue. In my mind, it's not a race issue. It is an intention issue. You can't just be wielding a gun flippantly as if this is a toy, as if there aren't life and death being decided quite literally in front of us every single day based upon this weapon. I don't see this as a race issue. I recall two of my former teammates, one still currently playing Fletcher Cox and Trent Cole, who's in the Eagles Ring of Honor, literally nicknamed the Hunter. They would post on social media their pictures with guns. But they were intentionally out there hunting with them, not yielding and wielding them in a manner that might be destructive to their own self. I think about it very simply put like this, and this is how I'll take us to break. Ja Morant could hold the world in the palm of his hands, but instead he chooses to hold a gun. And eventually, he's going to have to put that one down so that he can pick up what the NBA world has to offer.
Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.